Today I want to talk about treasure in jars of clay, and let's pretend is the first heading I have. You see, it's part of our human DNA to pretend to others that everything is okay. How are you? We often are asked, and immediately it rolls off our tongue that, oh, I've never been better. And yet sometimes the reality is very different. See, our default setting requires us to project an image of who we want others to see us as. We wear masks, not the kind of masks that we're wearing for COVID to protect each other, but more masks like this. I picked this up in Venice many years ago on holiday. We often hide behind masks, hide behind images of who we want others to think that we are. The Apostle Paul speaks of himself and of all of us as being like jars of clay. So what did he mean by that? Being jars of clay. I want to suggest a bit like this pot in front of me. More often than not, we present ourselves as polished pots of porcelain, maybe perhaps more like this pot here, and beautifully marked and so on. We put on a good side, don't we? We show only what we want others to see. Our pretense actually inhibits friendship from going too deep. It's superficial, it's shallow. Our misinformation campaign about ourselves, it does us no favours at all, and it just leads us sometimes to even believe in the illusion that we present to others as ourselves, and it's just a mess. So I want to suggest that we need to own our fragility as clay pots. If Paul is right in saying that we are like this pot here, I don't know about you, but I find Paul's assertion that we are jars of clay much more realistic than the let's pretend game, and to be honest, it's a great relief. I don't have to pretend I have everything sorted. You wouldn't believe me in any ways. I am full of vulnerabilities, limitations, insecurities and flaws. I apologise if that disappoints some of you, but I've just had some minor surgery about a month ago, and to be honest, it absolutely floored me for a couple of weeks, and then I had brain fog for another couple of weeks, more so than usual. And it's brought me face to face with reality afresh that I'm not an invincible superhero. Now, not that I ever thought I was, but I'm an aging man and nearly 50, and even though I once had a nickname called Mighty Mouse in school, I think it was more a dig at my size than it was about any other capabilities that I might have had. And I think this whole pandemic nightmare and all the uncertainty it creates, this overwhelming, and that often threatens to overwhelm us like some kind of black cloud, has exposed this reality for all of us. We are a whole lot more fragile than we once believed that we were. An invisible microscopic virus has brought the globe to a standstill. What does that say about humanity? In early March, perhaps we thought we held our own destiny in our hands. I'm not so sure any of us think that anymore. The truth is, we are a lot more like this clay pot than we care to admit. We are easily broken, tumbling traumatically through life's ups and downs, rolling through life's journey, with bumps, sustaining bruises, stress lines, chips and cracks. You see, we, just like clay pots, get wrinkly and grey-haired. We bear scars, we feel aches and pains. Wealth and influence evaporate. Illnesses seek us out, and death ultimately stalks us. You see, the Bible teaches us to embrace our fragility. There is freedom, actually, in accepting our weakness and our fragility and our flaws, rather than trying to pretend that they're not there. Yeah, what are we to do with that? When faced with the reality of our true self, it's not always easy, is it? Perhaps Paul would be doing us little favours if he offered us no help, no strength or no light. Without any answers, we'd be cornered and crushed. We'd be perplexed and in despair. We'd be pursued and feel abandoned. And we'd be felt struck down, waiting to be destroyed. I hope that there is more to life than waking up to recognise that we're broken and flawed, and then just to expire. It's not exactly an inspiring image, is it? Yet I believe when we realise we are weak, it's only when we realise that we're weak that we'll actually look for strength. And until we know that there is darkness within, we'll not look for light. Until we know we are empty, we'll not ask for treasure. Perhaps we were made to be vessels that carry greatness. In the ancient world, pots such as this, clay pots, surprisingly cheap and inexpensive objects, were used to store valuables. We see here we've got like some jewelry, some necklace thing, a map, an old book. That sort of thing was kept. Often some of the most historical documents that was known to men has been stored hidden in caves in clay pots. Look at what Paul says in verse 7. He says, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us." He says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." It's possible to have treasure in jars of clay, and it's this treasure that provides the power from God. Wherever you're at today, Paul is telling us it is possible as jars of fragility, limitation and expiry dates to carry an incredible treasure that transforms ordinary life. Isn't that worth something worth exploring? Could God want that for you and for me? What if we place ourselves in His hands with honest assessment of our flaws and weaknesses? What if God can gather up all the broken pieces of our lives and glue us back together again, fit for new purpose? What if He can so radiate His light through the cracks of our lives that we shine spectacularly? Surely this is why Jesus came. He knew we were broken and flawed. He came to powerfully and artistically redeem us. Listen to what Paul says again. He says, For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of darkness,' made His light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ." What if His light can flood the darkness of our souls and we can carry about His treasure, the treasure of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ? Doesn't that sound a lot more like true Christianity than playing let's pretend we are perfect when we know we are not? God says, if you embrace honesty and transparency, others will see God's glory and power. Doesn't that sound amazing? Instead of saying to others, "Look at me," we are created to say, "Look at our amazing God. He is my strength and my treasure." Surely the basis of true community begins there. Authentic friendships start with an openness, with vulnerability that paves the way for depth. And it's then that God shows up visibly through our transparency with one another. This, I believe, is the collective pathway to power and weakness, to light in our darkness, and to strength in our fragility. See, true Christianity doesn't draw attention to ourselves, but to the one holding us together, the treasure that makes our boat float. If you're feeling fragile and flawed today, join the club, but don't despair or give up. Ask God to shine His light in your heart. Embrace your broken parts and your flawedness and seek His strength to radically change your life. What is surprisingly beautiful is that the Creator God is willing to entrust fragile clay jars with the treasure of knowing Him. So don't hide your cracks, your blemishes, for in the hands of God they may become more beautiful than any other part of us. And the treasure of God adds immense value even to our earthen vessels that we live in. I'm your host, Matt Tuttleby of Bundoran Bible Reflections. May God bless you today.